And the question was, how many people here who've spent 4 or more weeks eating only raw, ate cooked food, and felt more poorly as a result? Almost everybody raises their hand when I ask that question, those people who'd eaten raw. Okay, and that's not just eating junk food. That's if you eat brown rice, steamed vegetables. Your cleaner, more efficient body responds to those cooked foods just like it's been poisoned, but only because it has. As I started to say before, let me start by reminding everybody of something I think I said yesterday for those of you that were here, and those of you that have been with me before. Every species on the planet has a natural species-specific diet. For every single species, that diet includes only those things they can go out into their environment and consume as they are. Nothing that they need to cook or process. So, with 25 million species on the planet, can we first of all acknowledge that cooking is an unnatural process in nature? So that's not something that happens in nature, okay? Let's start there. Now, personally, I have a bit of a bias because what has brought me to this point, and I started studying health and nutrition at the age of 14. So it's now been 44 years. And one of the things I realized early on was that nature has all the answers, okay? If I want to feel and function as well as possible, what I need to do, what I've been attempting to do all these years, is to understand and apply the laws of nature as well as I can to my own body. Because if the same thing happens over and over again in nature, to me it seems clear that maybe I'll benefit from applying the same principles, the same laws, perhaps, to my own life. Okay? So the first one is that every species consumes those things that it can consume in their natural state. Cooking's not included in that. But there's much more. That's not enough to suggest that cooking is harmful to us. What is? Well, who knows what a leukocyte is? Anybody? What's a leukocyte?
Leukocyte is part of the immune system.
Okay, more specifically, anyone?
The main.
It's one of our white blood cells. We make a bunch of different white blood cells, leukocytes and lymphocytes and neutrophils, but leukocytes are one of the primary white blood cells, and their job is whenever there's any kind of an injury to the body makes leukocytes in the bone marrow and sends them to the site of injury. Okay? So when I was stung by a scorpion yesterday, there would have been leukocytes sent to that site of injury to deal with the toxins there. Okay? If you break a bone or bruise yourself or burn yourself or damage yourself, injure yourself in any way, your body's going to manufacture leukocytes and then send them to the site of injury. Okay? And science and medicine acknowledge that leukocytosis, the name for this process, this only happens in the event of an injury, which is another way of saying that your virtually infinitely intelligent body isn't going to go to all the trouble and use all the energy to make leukocytes and then send them to the site of an injury, send them somewhere in the body in the absence of an injury. It's not going to do anything for no reason. Does that make sense? Okay. So science and medicine say leukocytosis only happens in the event of an injury, with the exception of digestive leukocytosis. Turns out that when humans eat food, the body makes leukocytes and sends them to the digestive tract. For no reason. That makes perfect sense, right? Does that make sense to anyone? Well, so 120 or so years ago, there was a scientist named Paul Kuchikoff. It didn't make any sense to him either. So Kuchikoff designed a simple experiment where he took human subjects and he fed them the same food on 2 different occasions, first cooked and then raw. Well, it might have been first raw and then cooked, but raw and cooked on 2 different occasions. And what he found out was that digestive leukocytosis only occurs in the presence of cooked food. Okay, cooking food, eating cooked food creates a response by the body of leukocytosis, which doesn't happen with raw food. Why is that? Well, for a long time, there were only theories about why this is. But over the last 50 or 60 years, there's been a lot of advancement in the understanding of what's going on. And one of the pieces that was kind of cool, I was off to Europe to speak 2002, 17 years ago, and just about a month or so before I took off, there was a study published from Europe which said, well, it was interesting. In fact, I'll tell you the story about how this happened. Scientists wanted to determine what was the increased risk of cancer for people working with a known carcinogenic compound called acrylamide, which is a form of plastic, which is known to be carcinogenic, okay, and is believed to be a strongly dangerous substance. And there's a manufacturing process where people were handling this substance. And so they reasoned that they probably had an elevated risk of cancer. Makes sense, right? Well, they ran the numbers and did a statistical analysis and found that people working with this substance had no elevated risk of cancer. And that didn't make any sense. So they sought to figure out why that was. And what they determined was that there was no elevated risk of cancer because everyone there was eating acrylamide several times a day. Now raise your hand if you would ever eat acrylamide. Are you sure?
Not knowingly.
Not knowingly. You've all eaten acrylamide many times. Okay, the reason people there didn't have an elevated risk of cancer was because everyone was eating it multiple times per day, because it shows up in all cooked carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, like bread, pasta, potatoes. Okay, you cook a carbohydrate, you form acrylamide. Now, the higher the temperature, the more acrylamide is formed, the more dangerous it is. So fried foods, baked foods are particularly dangerous because they're cooked at higher temperatures. Boiled foods, steamed foods are less dangerous. Coffee beans, by the way, anyone like coffee? You roast a coffee bean, you create a lot of acrylamide. Okay? This is a compound that causes cancer. Still think coffee is good for you? Okay, it's not. It's not. So these are substances which didn't exist, were created by cooking. Now, if that sounds funny, anyone here ever study to be a chef? Anyone ever go to culinary school? If you've ever looked at a culinary school's course catalog online, you will see a series of courses called food chemistry. Okay? Because when you heat food, you're creating chemical reactions. They're called Maillard reactions. And these are the reactions that have food, if food changes color, okay? It's the Maillard reaction. There's a whole bunch of different ones. But you're creating carcinogenic, mutagenic compounds. Compounds that cause cancer, compounds that cause mutations in your DNA. That's what happens when you eat cooked food. So I asked this group yesterday, I think, or the other day, and I've asked every group. I asked the same question when I was with you on that kibbutz somewhere in the north of Israel just about 10, 11 months ago, right? And the question was, how many people here who've spent 4 or more weeks eating only raw, ate cooked food, and felt more poorly as a result? Almost everybody raises their hand when I ask that question, those people who'd eaten raw. Okay, and that's not just eating junk food. That's if you eat brown rice with steamed vegetables. Your cleaner, more efficient body responds to those cooked foods just like it's been poisoned. But only because it has. Okay? Because all cooked foods contain some quantity of carcinogenic, mutagenic compounds. Every one of them. Some more than others. Some things are much worse than others. Okay, French fries and potato chips are much worse than steamed vegetables. How much of these toxic compounds do you want in your body? Okay, that's the question you want to ask. Remember, if your body's clean enough, I'll guarantee you this. You know, again, if you're sitting here and you're not, I know some of you are already eating the diet that I recommend and intend to go back to it. I know some of you have struggled with maintaining that diet, and are one of the reasons you're here is to make it easier to maintain an optimal diet. And I know others of you came in maybe with no thought of that, but have since decided maybe that makes sense, right? Whatever you're thinking, for the 6 weeks after you leave here, if you want to maximize the benefits of the process, you need to stick with the plan I'm going to give you, okay, which is going to be all raw. You need to do that because it's going to take you 6 weeks to even realize all the benefits of what you've already done or are currently doing. So you need to follow the program. Now, if you're not sure you want to stick with this, at the end of that 6 weeks, go ahead and eat whatever you think is the healthiest cooked food you can eat. If you're not sure you're going to be raw, I guarantee you there will be negative reactions. Your temperature is going to go up. Why does that happen? Fever happens on purpose. Your body raises the temperature on purpose because the leukocytes work harder at higher temperature. So when there's damage that the body needs to deal with, it creates a fever. This is why there's a fever when there's an infection, because there's a lot of white blood cell work necessary, and the body does this on purpose. It's part of the process. Okay? And this is why I think you may have, some of you have heard me say that when your diet is clean, your body is clean and well functioning, your temperature will be lower than the average temperature. Normal temperature is too high because the average person's creating a little mini fever multiple times per day. Every time they eat the way they do, their body temperature goes up. That never happens if you're eating an optimal diet. Okay? It never happens. So it turns out there's other toxins created. In fact, many that we may not even know what they are yet. After this research was published regarding acrylamide, Lund University in Sweden formed an association with a bunch of other research institutes in Europe. And they started something called the Hetox Project, looking at toxins created by heating food. And they've uncovered several others. Some of the ones I'm going to share with you are things we already knew about. But what they're saying is there are many other toxins that they haven't had a chance to study in detail yet, okay? Created by cooking food. The ones we know about, first of all, some of these things we've known about for a long time. Heterocyclic amines. These are created by cooking animal products. Okay, you heat, and again, the higher the temperature, the more of them there are. They're carcinogenic compounds. So if you're eating animal products and they're cooked, you're probably consuming HCAs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are things that occur with smoke. So if you're grilling or smoking food, any food, okay? In fact, any food that's been around smoke could be covered with heterocyclic amines and, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And these are also carcinogenic and mutagenic compounds. Okay, consuming these things dramatically raises your rate. Now, you know what they say when they look at these things? Understand that much of the science is supported or edited by government, because government's largely supported, I would say, bought and paid for by big industry. Okay, so they say what they want them to say. And what they say is, oh yeah, but for instance, the levels of PCAs or PCHs, PAHs, HCAs that you need to consume would be like 1,000 times what somebody normally would consume in order to get cancer. But that's not true. That's a spin. Because what they're doing is they're giving these things to rats and mice in very high quantities to create tumors quickly. Well, no one's going to ever eat that much at one time. But science is also very clear that if you take small amounts of this stuff and consume it consistently over enough period of time, you're likely to wind up with the same result. Okay? So this is, again, this is pretty well known. HMFs, 5-hydroxymethylforphenols. These are chemicals produced, again, by cooking, by creating, by heating food. And they're converted into SMFs, which are mutagenic compounds. So eating cooked food creates the significant possibility of mutating your DNA, of harming your body in serious ways. AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Okay, this is what happens when you glycate proteins and fats, which, again, primarily from animal products, but even from other foods as well. Processed foods contain high levels of AGEs as well. And these aren't particularly carcinogenic. Don't do that. Come here. It's okay. She's going to do it anyway. But AGEs create cross-linkage in the body. And so what happens is you wind up with more atherosclerosis. You wind up with more heart disease. You wind up with more stroke. You wind up with cataracts. There's actually a long list of issues that they believe are significantly created. Come here, you. Oh. Created as a result of advanced glycation end products from cooking food. Okay, that's just a short list. In fact, let me read something. I brought this with me for this reason today. So this is a statement by the Detox Project, who said, listed here are just some of the harmful substances in cooked foods. This is in a summary. In the summary of the Detox Project, the final report stated, lastly, it's known that a great number of proven or suspected carcinogens, in other words, other Maillard reaction products, such as heterocyclic amines, furfural, and furan derivatives, together with lipid peroxidation products, can be formed during heat treatment of food. It's important to further study the health risk associated with heat-generated food toxicants. What they're saying is they've already seen many other toxins being created that they haven't had time to study in detail. But as I've said, in my talking with dozens, probably hundreds of people who've eaten a raw vegan diet, every single one of them, virtually every single one, who's gone and eaten some cooked food feels the negative impacts of that. There's a reason that that's happening, okay? There's a reason your body is reacting, because it's intelligent enough to know when it's been damaged. Now, obviously, if you eat this stuff every single day of your life, and you always have, your body is not going to be reacting to it. You're not going to notice anything, okay? There are people who eat at McDonald's every day and feel fine. Okay? I don't think anybody here would want to go to McDonald's today. Even if you've only fasted one day, you probably wouldn't feel very good. And if you've been fasting for 3 weeks, you'd probably feel really bad. Okay? Because your clean body would have the ability to react in a way that's actually appropriate to that garbage. But people who eat it every day, they're no longer reacting to it at all. So the fact that most people can eat this stuff and feel fine doesn't make it okay. Okay, you want to be really clear about that. So again, what you do is completely up to you. I would encourage you to take your head out of the sand and look at the simple facts. And the facts are that cooking food creates toxic compounds, and that eating such cooked food creates an immune response every time you do it. Now, it's been said that you can actually trick the body. If you eat enough raw food first and then eat the cooked food, your body won't react. You won't have leukocytosis. Does anyone think that's a good idea? Remember, your body is responding to toxins with an appropriate response, leukocytosis. Why would we want to trick the body into not doing what it needs to do? It's like people are saying, well, because there's no leukocytosis, it must be okay. No, it's not okay. It doesn't change, eating raw food first doesn't make the cooked food less toxic. It doesn't eliminate or reduce the amount of AGEs or HCAs or PAHs or acrylamide, other Maillard products. These things aren't in any way reduced because you're eating raw food. It's something that simply, if it's true, the body doesn't react the same way if you've eaten enough raw first. But what you want, and for those of you that are just getting here and just getting started, and for those of you who have been here longer, if I've somehow neglected to say this to you, right? My starting point with every new client, whether in person, at a weekend event where we met last year, whether it's an evening lecture, usually I'll start, at some point by saying, you want to get really, really clear about what you're committed to creating for yourself. Okay, there's no right or wrong. I mean, if you came around this time, this life, if your goal was to create heart disease, then you should probably be eating McDonald's. Okay? That might be the best diet for you, if that's the objective. And I'm not joking when I say that. I actually believe that we live many lifetimes and need to experience everything there is to experience in this form. So at some point, maybe that's what's going to happen. But if, now that you're here, no matter what you came to do, now that you're here, you get to choose anything you want. Okay? We have complete freedom of choice. So if what you'd like to do now is feel and function as well as you possibly can, the answer is simple. Okay? Eat the one diet that your body is actually well adapted for and that doesn't harm you in any way. Even though it's not what you grew up with. It's not your cultural diet. It doesn't include all the comfort foods. Okay, I have a client who started with me today on a Skype fast. She's fasted with me several times before, actually volunteered at the center many years ago. And she recently broke her arm in an accident. She wrote to me yesterday and said, I broke my arm. What do you think I should do? And I said, you know what I think you should do. You should fast. So she wrote to me last night and said, okay, can you guide me? I was like, yeah, of course, no problem, right? So we added her to the group. I work with a group of people now via Skype. And I said, tell the other people here about your diet, because for the last 8 or 9 years, she's been eating an exclusively raw vegan diet based on the principles I teach. Except, she said, except that every once in a while, I'll make a poor choice. I'll say, why? She said, well, usually it's because I'm feeling emotions I don't want to feel. She said, I had a really rough week. I did really well, but I had a rough week last week. Every day there was just all these stresses piling up, and I finally went and had one cooked meal. And she said, one cooked meal, I felt fine after a week of feeling stressed. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's a good reason to eat cooked food. But what she said was, it's amazing how much it numbed me out. Okay? I don't know about you. I don't want to not feel. I want to find a constructive way to deal with my emotions. So if I've got negative emotions, if I've got anxiety or fear or whatever it might be coming up, I want to find a way to deal with those emotions so I can release them. I don't want to stuff them and keep them in my body, because that causes disease. She said one cooked meal, and she wouldn't have gone to McDonald's. I didn't ask her what she ate, but it's probably was rice, grains, and steamed vegetables and stuff like that. Still going to be pretty healthy food. I've known her for 20 years. She's going to make healthy choices. One cooked meal was enough to suppress her emotions. I would just say, get clear for yourself. Okay, what do you want to do? You want to really live? Because being alive means we feel everything. Is that so bad? Well, if you've grown up like most of us have, believing that it's not okay to feel certain things, guys, right? Can't feel fear, can't feel sadness. That's not for men. We men don't cry. Bullshit. Okay, that's a sick idea. It doesn't promote health. We have to be willing to feel every emotion. And simply feeling it completely, we can let it go. and it can stop affecting us. So you can use food as a drug to suppress emotions, but is that leading you in the direction you want to go in? I don't think so. Oh, by the way, farmers, animal farmers, people that farm animals, to produce meat, for instance, whether it's beef or pork or whatever, they've long been cooking the animal feed. Why do you think they do that? What impact do you think that has on the livestock? It makes them fat. And how do they sell their livestock?
By the pound.
By the pound. Okay, do you want to be fat? Okay, and if you just taking the same food and cooking it, they get fatter. They get less healthy. Okay, the dairy farmers now often feed baby calves, if they're not killed immediately, they are fed pasteurized milk. So the milk that their mother produced directly for them is cooked before they get to eat it. And guess what? They're not very healthy. They're much less healthy that way. Again, what I would say to you, if you're one of those people that's still questioning this or still not sure what you want to do, first of all, get completely clear what it is you want to create for yourself. What are you committed to creating for yourself? Do you want to feel and function as well as you can? Do you want to have incredible vitality? Do you want to have incredible mental clarity? Okay? You want to feel amazing. You want to stop worrying about excess weight. You want to easily stay strong and fit. Do you want to create all of the miraculous things that you're capable of creating? If the answer is yes to those questions, then the only way that's going to happen is if you eat the optimal diet for your body. And once you're committed to something, you simply do what you need to do. That's what commitment is. If I'm committed to this, then I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make that happen. Okay, if you're not committed, that's fine, but you want to get clear, what are you committed to? Okay, and then, a lot of people imagine, yeah, but I'm going to miss all that stuff I used to eat. Okay? That's not what happens for most people. What most of us find is that we don't miss all that other stuff because we feel so good. And the food tastes amazing. I mean, that's the thing. People say to me, don't you miss? I'm like, are you kidding? I get to eat watermelon, mangoes, papayas every day. I get to eat dessert all the time. Why would I want to eat the other stuff? What do you think I'm going to be missing? Okay, I'm not missing anything. And I'm certainly not missing not feeling well. I'm not missing being tired. I'm not missing having poor mental clarity.